Hey guys, Anthony, 4x4 diesel. Don't think I can't drive straight, just change lanes out of the left lane to the next one. So I'm pretty good at driving straight. And now I realise why they taught us in kinder to colour in, and how at school, in primary school, how the teacher said, you know, you got to keep it neat, keep it, you know, this side of the line and all that, right? It's all about driving. And we can see all the people that weren't so good at kinder. Anyway, maybe that's a multitasking thing, the whole using the phone while you're driving thing. Pretty sure that's why they made it illegal. Anyway, what's the subject at the moment? The subject is when to rotate your tyres. I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but there's a lot of talk about it here and there at times. There's different recommendations, and it varies widely depending what tyre, what size tyre, what vehicle. So this is kind of like an all vehicles when to rotate the tyres guide, and some people are saying get on with it, but like most of the subscribers, the reason they've subscribed and they've got the bell on is because they know I give you maximum information and I give you the reasons why. That's why this, if not already, well, it probably is the best automotive YouTube channel. It's just not the biggest because it's new. So lucky you for getting in early. When to rotate your tyres. Most manufacturers will recommend rotating your tyres every 10,000 kilometres. That's around about, you know, each service in most countries, you know, depending whether you're in kilometres or miles, 16,000 miles. You know, a lot of places, you know, the service intervals are a lot further apart, even though it's the same engine, and oils ain't oils, or oils are oils. So we're not talking about oil though, we're talking about tyres, right? So on the stuff, on the four-wheel drives and stuff like that, where you've got deeper tread and the tyres will probably often last, I'm going to say circa 100,000 Ks. You know, some people, the way they drive, they're not even going to get 100 out of them. Some people, the way they drive, they get 150,000 Ks out of them. It's crazy. So the answer is around about, and this is a ballpark circa, it's around about, you got to rotate them around about every 15 to 20% of their tyre life. So what does that mean? So if you've got a Toyota Camry with, let's say, 17-inch wheels, and the tyres are probably going to last 50,000 Ks, again, depending what sort of rubber, not just the size and the car and the driving style, but depends if you went for rubber that's expensive and grippy, that grips really well, but won't last as long, or whether you went for something that doesn't grip as well, which grips more than enough, but it's going to last longer. If you're driving on the roads within the speed limits, sometimes the tyre that grips well and truly more than enough, that's going to last longer, is definitely better value for money. If you're doing the odd track day every now and then, that's probably why you've spent a bit more money on the rubber. It'll grip better, but it isn't going to last so long. It won't last as long, but that's not what you want. You want maximum grip, right? So averages. So we've got a Toyota Camry, 7-inch wheels, an average set of tyres that with the average driver should be able to last about 50,000 Ks. The answer is you probably should rotate them every 10,000 Ks. Okay. I'll give you some other information after I give a few more examples as to even better ways to work out when you should rotate your tyres. Okay, on four-wheel drives, generally any four-wheel drive, but you know, we work on Prado, so we'll give the Prados as a fair example. The Toyotas, the suspension and components, the front ends and that, the components are really good quality, so you don't get the wear, you don't get the slop, you don't get the free play anywhere near as much or as often. I'll say, to cover myself, I won't say you never get it, I'll say you don't get it anywhere near as much or as often as some other, let's say, the older cars and some cheaper brands that haven't figured out yet, right? So on those vehicles, you'll get some people saying, oh yeah, I rotate my tyres every 5,000 Ks, and they think they're doing a great thing. And then you've got the people that do the rotate every 10,000 Ks, which is kind of a pretty standard thing, which is all right too. But I will say, you can leave them 20,000 Ks. And this is why, okay? So, remember the Camry tyres? They were getting done every 10,000 Ks. So there's going to be 10, 20, 30, 40. There's going to be 4 rotations in a 50,000 K life, okay? Now, on the Prado, if they're going to last about twice as long, say a BFG KO2, on a Prado, some people are going to get more, some people are going to get less, but they're going to last about 100,000 Ks. Okay, some people change them sooner because they want deeper tread, because they do a lot of off-road, like what I do. I don't run them down, but if you're mainly predominantly on the road and going to the shops and the school and the family and the friends and all work and all the stuff like that, you can run them down till there's a few millimeters left if that suits your needs. Okay, and they're the ones that are going to get, I got 120 and I got 130 and I got 140, that sort of thing. Typically I'll be changing my tyres at about 60 or 70,000 Ks tops, depends what trip we've got coming up and whether I decide I need deeper tread for that. And I may need deeper tread for traction in mud, it could be traction in snow, it could be I just want fresher rubber that grips better because we're coming into winter. There's a lot of reasons I'll change my tyres. It might be I want deeper tread because I'm doing an outback trip where I know there's a lot of sharp, shaly stuff on those tracks and stuff, and the deeper the tread, because you're only on sort of high 20s, you know what I mean? You're not really affecting your sidewall too much usually, like that tie down on the road there, that'll rip through the sidewall of your tyre if you hit that sometimes, depending which way you hit it. But it's more about tread, you know, that how much rubber you've got there, protect from it penetrating through from the main tread through to your tyre quite often is what it is. So you don't want to be out there with 30% left, you know, 3, 4, 5 mil, because you've only got that plus your carcass, what's left there in protection. Where if you've got full depth that used to be around 14 mil, it's not anymore, right? You know, you had a good sort of 15, 16, 17 mil of rubber there, and it was a lot harder for a rock to penetrate through those layers. Anyway, back onto the topic. See, this is what happens, guys. This is why, look, a lot of people love it. Some people are like, you know, get to the point. You know what? If you want to get to the point, someone else can get to the point, but you'll miss out on the other information. Right. This is why, right? Because I'm not going to just tell you, hey guys, rotate your tyres every 20,000 Ks. See ya. Because you're going to go, that guy's an idiot. So we give you why, right? The uncommon sense that used to be common sense. Reasons why we recommend things from our experiences. This is what we work on, this is what we see, this is what we do. Now, so if you've got a vehicle that doesn't wear tyres, and you've got a tyre that's going to last ages, and you change it, you know, rotate it front to rear 20,000 Ks, and there's people going, oh, what about the spare? Let's get to that, if I don't forget, right? The best way to rotate tyres to keep it really organised is front to rear, right? You know, a lot of cars, they don't have a full-size spare. You know, traditionally that's the way it's been done. That's why it's quite often it's good to, once you get your second set of tyres, that's where you use your spare and you buy 3 and you keep the best of your fourth one as your spare, because guess what? You're never going to use your spare. In a four-wheel drive, you're just going to have $300 or $400 hanging off the back of the car. It's just going to, and it's probably more likely to be in the sun more than the others, right? So have a think about that. You know, each to their own. I get it, the 5 tyre rotation thing. We'll get to that. If I remember in this video, it wasn't about how to rotate tyres. I haven't quite finished on the point it was, but I'll get to that as well. I added in there for you as well, because look, we're only at 8 minutes, and you know what, we'll try and keep it to about 20 minutes for you. So the reason why 20,000 is because we see tyres. There he goes now, right? There he goes in the modified with the exhaust and all that, right? So in that patrol there, it's getting a bit older. It's a Nissan, it's a bit sloppy, it's got some big mud tyres, and they're going to wear a bit more than what Prado tyres do. So he's probably going to need to stick to rotating every 10,000 Ks if he doesn't want to get, because what's going to happen if you leave it too much longer, they're going to start to feather up because you've got so much lift and everything's so far out of whack, and there's that much slop there because the vehicle's so high and the tyres are so big, they're just not going to wear that great, okay? So you want to get those tyres off the front that are starting to feather up, because they're doing, remember your front tyres are doing a lot of your steering and braking, and that's what cops the front when you're cornering and stuff like that. The rears, they're just following along, trailing along, you know what I mean? So they wear quite flat, depending on your tyre pressures, okay? So tyre pressure is important too. I'll try and include that towards the end and give you an indication what you should do depending what wear issue you've got. So every vehicle varies, and that's where I'm going to say there's a better way to work out other than how many kilometres. So every 5,000 Ks, you're just creating work for yourself, you're wasting money, you're wearing out your wheel nuts and studs. And when I say that, on some vehicles like the Prados and Hiluxes and others, sometimes people over tighten the wheel nuts and it stretches them, and every time you tighten them up, technically you know, So you're kind of wearing out your studs a bit, I'll be honest, you are. So you want to minimise it from that respect, and that's another reason I like the 20,000. So you're looking at a tyre that's done 20,000 Ks, you can't pick the difference front to rear. Looking at them, you can't see any feathering, any edge wear, anything like that. Why would you rotate them? Okay, so the evidence there, you don't need to. Now, let me explain it this way. If you rotate your tyres every 5,000 Ks, this is a bit of mathematics. I hope all the kids are watching. This is where it gets educational, right? If you rotate your tyres every 5,000 Ks in 100,000 Ks, kids, how many times have you rotated those tyres in 100,000 Ks if you've done it every 5,000? So I'll give you a hint. It's 100,000 divided by 5,000. I'll give you the answer. It's 20. You've rotated your tyres 20 times in the life of your tyres. That is so much work. 20 times all those wheel nuts have gone on and off. Haven't you got something better to do? You know what I mean? Go out and hit the tracks for the day or something. We're sort of talking a bit forward driving now, you know. So whether they do 5,000 on the front, 5,000 on the rear, it's not going to matter. If you've got good wearing tyres, they're not going to get to that point where they've got enough damage on them that it's going to matter. And I'll go to the point of pointing out, you could probably stretch them even to 30 or 40,000. I've seen Prados from new with BFG tyres and other tyres that I can't see the wear on the things, you know what I mean? You've got to get them to 60 or 70,000 Ks sometimes before you can actually see the wear. So if you were to run them till 50,000 Ks without swapping them, and then swap them once at 50 front to rear, that's one less, because you should check the wheel balance every time you do a rotate. If you've got one of your rear ones out because you've, maybe hit a pothole or a gutter and it's out a little bit, and then you just put it on the front yourself to save money instead of going somewhere paying for a rotate and balance, which is cheap anyway, which is also often free with where you buy your tyres, free rotate and balance service for the life of the tyres. That's how they get you coming back, and hopefully you buy them again next time. It's a good service. I suggest you use it, but just because it's free, don't go and do it every 10,000 Ks. Don't complain at your Toyota dealer if it's part of the service to get a rotate every 10,000 Ks and they didn't do it, because maybe they're sort of thinking a bit like me. And to be honest, some of the money you're paying sometimes for some services, it's not that much for the amount of work involved. Maybe they're doing other things that are more important. That's what I do, okay? So it's the biggest thing about tyre rotations is if you've got a tyre that's going to only last 20 or 30,000 Ks, some cars, I'll give you an example, right? So if you've got a high-powered front-wheel drive vehicle, for example, now we've got a Subaru going past us, they're all-wheel drive, so that's not going to work. Subaru's all-wheel drive, so they wear the tyres really well, because, look, some vehicles that are high-powered, they're front or rear-wheel drive, and both traditionally over the years and still currently, there's a certain amount of slip when you accelerate, okay, and that's what wears the rubber. And you can go through a set of tyres, either front or rear in some of these vehicles, in 20,000 Ks or less. Some people it all depends how you drive, okay? It all depends how hard you are on the pedal, a little bit or all the time, as to what you're going to get out of them. So for those vehicles, they're the ones, I'll give you an example, Honda Civic Type R, they pump out something like nearly 230 kilowatts of power, okay? That's a lot of power, quite a lot of Newton meters of torque. They're a very expensive, if I remember correctly, a 20-inch tyre, okay? Nothing's happening to the rear, it's just sitting there and trailing along, unless, of course, you on the racetrack, you are getting them hot, you're throwing it into bends, and all the tyres are going to get really hot and melt up, and you're going to cook the tyres in a couple of track days. They're going to be there's going to be so much wear, it's not funny, okay? So on the road though, if you're a bit of a rev head and you're accelerating hard, you're really going to chew into those tyres, okay? So you want to consider, depending how hard you are on the tyres. Let's take the average driver in one of these cars, an average kind of car. Let's say you're going to get 20 to 30,000 Ks out of them. You want to rotate them every 5,000 for that reason, because you're getting, not only is your front doing the steering and most of the braking, it's also doing the driving, the acceleration, okay? So they're really getting ripped into. And there's two ways to do tyres on, for example, a front wheel drive vehicle. You can replace the tyres in sets, or you can replace just the front. So if you want, you can leave the rear tyres and not rotate them at all. When the front's a cactus, you just throw a pair of fronts. You keep replacing the fronts, right? If you're getting the same tyres, that's good. It is always good, especially in performance vehicles, to have the same tyres front and rear, as well as left and right. So let's just quickly say, your tyres should always be the same, front and rear, as in, front, side to side, same. If you want, back in the day, people used to have lots of different tyres. At least they had, if you had the same front, the same rear, that was pretty good. But these days, generally, people have got the same tyres all around. It's good to do that, okay? It is good to keep the same if you can, depending what vehicle and what the use is. Now, this is definitely the long version of when to rotate your tyres, right? So you've got it figured out. If you've got a low profile tyre like this guy on the HSV 250 kilowatt Grange there, right? What happens with those vehicles? I'm just going to speed up a little bit. See what he's doing, eh? Yeah, he's pushing it a little bit. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. It's 4K video, but the front of it, look at the back tyres before he gets too far away. See, they're on an angle. I'm going to explain to you what happens in those, right? In these bloody Holdens back in the day, and when they came out with the independent suspension, they were the worst. They probably made some changes and got better, but I'll give you the examples, right? So, independent suspension at the rear, and they used to just sit with a lot of camber, like they're overloaded, like your old, like they had an old taxi with a gas tank in there, an old XE Falcon, They used to put the gas tank and the people in the back, and it'd be sitting, the back would be on the bump stops, and the front's popping monos. I don't know if you remember seeing those. Hopefully having a giggle, if you know what I mean, but because that's how they were. I shouldn't tell you this, but we used to cut a coil off the front of them, and then they sat nicely. But anyway, back in the day, apprentice stuff, Anyway, what happened with those vehicles? As you can see, he's cruising up the road at 100 k's. He's probably about 105, not too bad. And you could see the camber. So what that does, that creates a little bit of wear on the tyre. And that's just a little bit, but if you drive like that for 40,000 k's, you're going to get that wear across the tyre. Where in this case, the fronts are probably going to wear better then. And then once you put those rears on the front, it may cause the vehicle to pull around and behave badly, and you're going to be chasing wheel alignments, and it's all because of the tyres you put on the back. So this tyre business is quite in-depth to understand what some of the problems may be. Now, he seems to have slowed down a bit, because I'm back down to 100 on my speedo, which is a bit under 100, and I seem to be catching up to it, so that's good. Might get a better view of those tyres. But what the problem is, right, when you accelerate, and the harder you accelerate, the more this happens. The back bogs down, right? Or, can I say it? I won't say it, because I've got this thing of not swearing. So the back, it just bogs down, and the inside of the tyres really chew out quite badly. And we've seen them, I'm sure there's worse than this, but as an average, 20,000 k's and the steel belts are hanging out on the inside edge of the tyre. So if you've got 200 odd kilowatts, which those V8s, the V6s weren't as bad, of course, but again, depends how you drive. The V8s had a heap of grunt, really. I think I'm testing the memory now. Was it 225 kilowatts at one stage? What was that? What was the Gen 3? Geez, testing myself now. 5.7 litre V8. Was it 225 kilowatts or something? Something like that anyway, right? They had a 4-speed auto and a 6-speed manual option, but look, the utes were okay, because they're on leaf springs and they had the standard solid rear axle diff. But the sedans like the VTs, VXs and all that sort of thing, they were terrible. And that thing, I don't know what year it is, but it was about that sort of vintage. The point I'm trying to point out is you can get situations where you get excessive wear on the tyres, and that's going to need some more regular rotating, so it varies a lot. So I'm just trying to give you this is what I'm saying, it's not a simple answer, when do I rotate my tyres? It's not, you can't just say to everyone do it every 10,000 k's, because for some it's 5, and some are doing it at 5, shouldn't be doing it for 20,000, and some you can push it out to 30, 40 and 50, and just as the vehicles get older though, even the Prados and the other Toyotas, and they get a bit of wear in the suspension components, you can replace those components to get rid of the wear. That's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is take note of the wear, and if you start seeing wear on those front tyres, a little bit of feathering on the inside or outside edges, it's fairly even, then it's probably just wear from those worn components. Then you need to do your rotates front to rear every maybe 20,000, whatever the case may be. Okay, so Now that we've pretty well got an understanding of rotation, I just want to add that tip in there that the best way to work out when you're going to rotate your tyres is to look at them. So the first thing you got to understand a little bit to do with it is tyre pressure. Tyre pressure sort of paints a picture of what's going on, because, and also wheel alignment. So if you're seeing wear on your front tyres and it's got wear on both the outside edges evenly, inside and out, it could be a tyre pressure issue where the tyre pressure is a bit low. Okay, so if the tyre's standing up on air, basically you've got your sidewalls, and how much air pressure in there is how much it pushes the tread out in the center, if you know what I mean. So an overinflated tyre pushes the tread out more in the middle. So if you look at your tyre and you see the tread in the middle, it's got less depth left. You've been running your tyres overinflated, you need to back it off a little bit. If you're seeing even wear on the outside edges of the tyre and it's got heaps of thickness in the middle of the tread, you need to up. You've either been running around with a slow leak or something, or you've been running too low. You need to up the pressure, okay? And obviously the bigger what you see is, the more you got to make the adjustment. I'll give you some rough ideas on what I think tyre pressure should be, but again, it's a can of worms, okay? We worked on a lot of different vehicles. There's a lot of different profile tyres, all sorts of different variables, but we'll give you something. So look at the tyres. If you see even wear each side of the tyre, it may be a tyre pressure issue. Don't go chasing a wheel alignment. If it's not broke, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's too many people out there, at least here in Australia, that will make your wheel alignment worse than it was before you went in. If you've got a fairly new vehicle, even if you're getting a lift kit, if it's within our recommendations, minimal modifications and a slight lift, you can get away with, and it's certainly often better to not get a wheel alignment after doing your lift. Now it all depends how much you're gone for and that sort of thing, and some people will disagree. I'm talking about Prados now, alright? I'm not talking about all different vehicles. The amount of movement and twist in any of the bushes and that's a non-issue, and the amount of change in the toe-in camber and caster is also the same. We know it. We've seen vehicles from new. We've done lifts. We know vehicles that haven't had wheel alignments for 20, 40, 50, 100,000 Ks with suspension and tyres, and the tyres last looking good at 100,000 Ks, okay? So it's an absolute fact. We've seen it and done it. It's not a maybe. It's not I'm guessing. It's not me saying it works on every vehicle either, okay? So beware of that. We're talking about Prados with that point there. Now, so don't chase a wheel alignment unless you definitely need it. Now, how do you know when you need a wheel alignment? Well, if your vehicle is pulling left or right, it may or may not be the wheel alignment, okay? It could be the road. Now, if your wheel alignment's out and you've got it fixed up and it still pulls, well, that could be wear on the tyre that was caused by running so long with the wheel alignment out, right? So there's another little tip there. If the vehicle pulls, it's usually to do with the road. If it changes with the road camber, we've got a bit of camber here right now. This vehicle, by the way, it drives awesome. 120 Prado, nearly 400,000 Ks. The only thing that's been replaced in the front end is wheel bearings and lower control arms. Of course, you can't get the wheel alignment within specification because it's got a slight lift, but it's even both sides and it drives beautiful. And I'm allowed to tell you, I can let go of the steering wheel and let's see how it goes. You know, I mean, you kind of can't just let it go. You always need to have a hand on it, make a slight correction one way or the other. But the point is, this drives beautiful. It doesn't pull one way or the other. I barely any pressure. We've got a slight camber to the right there, so I'll sit keeping it to the, you know, just correct. We've got a slight bend in the road here. It's a pleasure to drive. That's how you want your vehicle. By having the right tyres, the right pressures, the right wheel alignment, and all your components right is key. Now, there's no point doing a wheel alignment if you've got worn components. If you've got worn tyre at ends or, you know, rack ends or other bushes, camber bushes, you know, control arm bushes, whatever, if there's movement there, there's no point doing a wheel alignment because it'll be aligned 1 minute and out the next. Depends which way the wind's blowing, if you know what I mean. So understand that, and I'll just put that tip out there. On the Prados, it's the inner rack end, okay, where the kind of like joint is at the end of the rack. They screw in and screw out. It's that arm that comes out. It's not the tie rod end that screws onto the rack end. It's the inner rack end. There's a joint there like a ball. It gets a bit of wear in it. You can get a couple mil of play there. Your wheel bearings can get a bit of play in them. We don't see play in anything else. So if that's all right, And you look, suspension's a big part of it as well. If you've got flogged struts and shockers and they're not doing the job doing the dampening, then you're going to have problems with tyre wear as well. So there's a whole big picture. But sometimes what the problem, I don't want to go into too much into wheel alignments. This is around about when to rotate your tyres, but a lot of information around why when you should rotate your tyres, if you know what I mean. So I think you figured it out. Look at your tyres, try and work out what's going on with them, okay? If you're looking at the back and you're going, gee, they're good, well, that's normal. That's why we rotate tyres. The front are the ones that are going to have wear. If you don't see any wear, if it's driving beautiful, you're happy with what you see, take a look at them. You don't need to get them rotated or everything, but take a look every 5,000. When it comes up at about 5,000, go and take a good look, get down on your knee, shine a light in there, and if you want to have a feel, be prepared to get your hands dirty and see if you can see any wear or feathering across the tyres. And if it's super slight, you know, and they've been like 30,000 Ks, I'd say, you know, you can probably wait a bit longer or you can do it. If you see that in a short period of time, 5 or 10,000 Ks, I would suggest that you need to sort it out, rotate the tyres, right? You might even need a wheel on it. Anyway, guys, what else can I tell you? That's the best way to work out when is by looking at the tyres. So ideally at service, your vehicle technician, your mechanic, whoever it is, should be looking at your tyres and advising when they need to rotate and balance. I don't agree with it just doing it automatically every 10,000 Ks, for the reasons as of creating work, wearing things out, doing damage unnecessarily. Let's do it when it needs it. Let's save everyone's time and money. That's how we do it. It's called efficiency, value, and stopping waste is what we're into. Anyway, I know it was a long one. If you got a heap of information out of that, subscribe. Don't forget to turn that bell on, because we're going to talk about a little bit more about wheel alignments and tyre pressures in another video. And have a great day. Give us a thumbs up if you got something out of that. Bada bing, bada boom. Catch you guys, see ya.